Welcome to our first Explain Yourself interview. This is Anna Farrell, a master's student at Northern Illinois University. She's my co-grad student and a wonderful person for volunteering to be the first interview victim. So I want to start you off with give me your elevator pitch for your current research. So like the 30-second version.
Alright, so in 30 seconds, basically I study the functional diversity of restored tallgrass prairies. And functional diversity is kind of this new term of diversity where we're looking at how organisms and individuals within the ecosystem are affecting the function of the overall ecosystem. So things like how is a plant uptaking nutrients, going through photosynthesis, individual roles like that, and how that's going to affect the ecosystem functioning in terms of things like net primary productivity, nutrient cycling as a whole, things like that, decomposition, that sort of thing.
So you mentioned we are doing a lot of our research on this functional diversity and functional trait sort of thing. So I know we've both been struggling with this sort of like, what's the difference between functional diversity and divergence and all of those different definitions. So do you think you have like a better handle on that now?
I think it kind of like comes and goes depending on how much I'm like reading about it and thinking about it. So back in April when we were doing our like presentations for our thesis proposals, that was a time where I felt really confident on like all of them because I was practicing it and like reading them a bunch. But now that I've been like doing field work all season, it's kind of like they're more in the back of my head. I'm kind of like, no, I got like simple tasks in front of me right now. But I think some of them can kind of be broken down to like more like sizable chunks. Like functional richness is the same thing as like species richness, where it's just a like list of all the different functional traits versus like functional divergence of like how are things kind of clumping when you like map them out or like graph them.
Yeah, and I feel like a lot of that'll become easier, like you said, when we did our proposals, and again when we're actually like writing up and defending, you sort of harness all of those definitions back in and like, here's the concrete background to all of the work I was doing.
And it's kind of like functional diversity is a funny thing to try to define. Like in my proposal presentation, I had a slide that was just definitions pulled out of different papers, and they all were kind of saying the same thing but in different ways, and you kind of gotta pick an avenue of like, this one makes the most sense for what I'm trying to say, so maybe I'll stick with this person's definition, or maybe I'll combine these two. So it's kind of like amorphous idea that we're still like framing in this like field.
Yeah. So I know you saw this. I like this the link to using the like 1,000 simplest or most common words in the English language to try to define your research. So you can put words there, type in there, and try to explain your research using the 1,000 simplest words.
Put words here, so
if it's red, that means that it's not simple
plant
enough.
isn't
in there?
No. Oh no.
Not even bug for mine is
okay,
simple enough.
So diversity's not in there.
A lot of people use thing and stuff.
What about grass? Is that in there? Oh, I spelled grass wrong. Grass is in there. Okay.
Yeah.
So I study grasses.
Well, you have to type in the whole sentence.
Oh,
like I study grasses and
study grasses. Yep. Okay. And this is like when you're trying to like type in front of a classroom and not make mistakes. And many types. Types isn't a thing. Many kinds.
Yeah. Is that good?
Yes. Many kinds. Oh god, where do I even go? And how
of course there's a mosquito right now.
Change?
Ooh.
Change is a word. And how they change with
He's getting fancy now. With what?
No, management.
Nope.
With
work?
Work. Change with is field in there? Field work.
Ooh.
So I'm going to use field work as a substitution for restoration practices.
Sure.
There we go. Okay, that was hard.
All right. So Anna's research is she studies grasses and many kinds and how they change with field work. I love it. That's awesome.
It's like trying to explain it to someone who doesn't know English. Like, what are the most common words that they would be able to understand.
Yeah.
Wow,
isn't that fun though?
I feel like I need to like have like hand motions.
Yeah.
A little like plant growing and how they're different. Yeah.
I should ask people to during these interviews to explain their research using interpretive dance.
Oh,
Best
like,
idea.
What's the game where you have to act it out?
Charades?
Charades. Yeah, we should do charades. you know. Yeah, you know. All right.
Excellent. Oh my gosh. Okay, so you gave us like the overview version of your research, but like sort of walk us through a little bit more specifically what it is you do.
So more specifically, I'm going out and I'm looking at the 10 most common, most abundant plants across 20 of our different field sites. And all of our field sites are either restored or remnant prairies. Some of them are managed through fire, which is like burning the prairie in the spring where they're pushing back like woody encroachment from like trees and shrubs and things like that, and kind of redepositing nutrients and kind of restarting the growth season every couple of years. And then we also have bison, which you talk a lot about with your research, which is awesome.
Love the bison.
The bison graze around, and we have this idea that they're going to create this kind of patchy landscape and increase the diversity and like heterogeneity of the landscape. So by sampling these 10 species, I'm looking at a bunch of different traits and how these two management practices, fire and bison, are going to be factors in how these traits differ. And then to take that from the functional diversity, so those traits, to the functioning of the ecosystem, I go back out again and collect all of the above ground plant growth, and then take a core of the soil for the roots, for the below ground, which is a lot of work and still being worked on. So those two measurements give us the growth of that year, so the net primary productivity. And that's one of the ecosystem functions that we can measure. So we're kind of looking at the diversity of plant traits and then how that correlates with the overall ecosystem functioning through plant growth.
Awesome. So, talking about your research, you explained what you do and how, and a little bit about how you do it, but what is your favorite part of your research?
So, when the field season like first started, I was like kind of nervous about this because I know I was going to be in charge of like leading a bunch of like undergrads, and I was going to be the one who had to know all of the plants that we were looking for and how to identify them and teach other people how to identify them. And I'm like, we only spent like a few days out here. I don't know all the plants. Like every time I'm out, I'm asking other people like, what's this? What's that? How do you know? Teach me. And so before everything started, I was like kind of nervous about that because there's just so many out there. But as we've gone through the field season, you really pick it up fast, and I really enjoy that aspect where like certain things that you were like kind of worried about, you're like, yeah, I'm proud of this now. Like I know what this grass is. Let me just touch it a bit, and like, oh, it's flat, so it's a little blue stem. Okay, we got it. Like, I really enjoy that part, and like thinking about how much I've learned in like such a short amount of time just doing the field work, like knowing like probably like over like 100 different like plant species, with learning them within like 2 months maybe, you know.
And I want you guys to know that she was a good teacher, because I don't really know how to identify prairie plants, but I learned so many of the grasses when I was helping her with her research. So
yeah, and just being able to like break it down to like, does it have this quality or this quality? Okay, well it's this or that. And just kind of making your own like mental dichotomous key that you're kind of working through every time you are out there. So I really enjoy that part of like just kind of becoming like a pseudo expert in like prairie plants identification.
Awesome. Okay, so what is like the number one thing that you wish you could go back in time and like tell yourself to prepare for field season? Like one thing that you didn't know that you wish you had known.
Let's see. I kind of had this idea already in my head when we started the field season, but it just really got like pounded into me throughout like my research and your research and helping out with other people's, is that everything will take longer than you think it's going to. And it doesn't matter how many times you've revised your methods in like the planning part of the spring, and when you're like looking at how other people did theirs and other papers. It doesn't matter how many times you've like walked around and like visualized yourself doing it in the field. There are gonna be problems that you didn't foresee. There's gonna be hiccups. That first day you're gonna get like maybe 2 sites done when you wanted to get done 6. Like, don't freak out, that's just the first day. It's always gonna be like that, and then it gets faster every single day afterward. But yeah, I kind of expected that, but then it just was even more apparent like every time we started like a new stage or a new project. It just
it all takes longer when you start. Yeah, and that makes us feel hopeful that like next summer it'll go so much faster because we already have done it. We know what we're doing.
We've already done the troubleshooting.
Yes,
hopefully,
unless there are new troubles. And speaking of trouble, like, so you talked about what you love and what you wish you knew. Is there anything that you just like, we'll be candid, grad school and like doing research is hard. Is there something that you hate about what you're doing, or like
about
something
like
that just like
field work,
just like really gets under your skin, or like something that you really wish wasn't a part of this? Like, what do
about
you,
field work or grad school in general?
anything?
Well,
what is your like number one?
Both.
Oh, okay.
I hate the bugs.
Oh my gosh, I knew you were gonna say that.
So I found like
biting
10
insects.
ticks
No.
within like 2 weeks when they were all like jumping and very abundant out in the field. So yeah, like luckily none of them had like, you know, gotten like embedded and swollen up or anything. And I found them like within a minute or two of them finding me. But that is a really irritating thing because all day after you find one, every little itch.
You're so like the creepy crawly feel.
Yeah, you have like phantom itches everywhere, and you're like, no, there's something in my hair. They're all over the place. And then the ants, like, oh my gosh, I had them crawling up my leg, inside my pant leg. Found one like on my back and bit me as I sat down in the car on our like one of our last
really
days. And like you're trying, like you're in front of a bunch of like undergrads, like you're, you know, the one
keeping
in charge.
Your cool?
Yeah, you're trying to keep your cool, and you're like, F this, like, you know, you want to just like just freak out a little bit, and you're like, I hate ants. Like, yeah, it's a little like, it is a bit of like comic relief after like a long day in the field, and like everyone's like, yeah, like ants are the worst. Let's go. Bye. Yeah. But yeah, that is something like. They're an important part of the ecosystem. I understand they have a role.
But when they bite you?
But man, like, please just don't crawl on me.
That's a good answer. I think that would probably be my number one hated thing about field work too. And what is your hated thing about grad school in general?
I mean, like it is good. It's very fun. Like we're all like happy we're here.
Yeah.
But I think I kind of had this idea that somehow made it through undergrad, where I had this idea of like, institutions are well-running, well-oiled machines.
You see the nitty-gritty, the dark underbelly.
Now we're kind of like, yeah, no one knows what they're doing. It's not a surprise that that paperwork didn't go through. It's not a surprise that someone didn't add my name to the email server for the first semester that I was here, you know, like just things like that.
So it's about being prepared to like have to check up on things and like make sure that things got done the way they need to be, like being a self-advocate.
Yeah, and like just kind of making sure like you can't just ask someone once for something. You have to go and bug them about it a couple times. Like, did you write that letter? Like, did you actually file that paperwork? Like, yeah, everything isn't always going to happen as smoothly as you think, and that's probably a common problem amongst like a lot of like universities and institutions. I don't think it's like central to NIU or anything.
It's still important to be thinking about.
But yeah.
That's fair. So beyond that, how do you think your grad school experience is going? Like, is this is something that you're glad you did?
For sure. Yeah. When I went straight from undergrad to grad school, and the year, like my senior year when I was sending out applications, I was kind of in this like limbo idea of like, I'd like to get in somewhere, but if I didn't, I could also work, and both sides would be pretty awesome. Either way, I'm getting experience. Either way, I'm pursuing my career path. So luckily, I was able to get in here, and I'm like super thrilled about it because I had no idea the kind of opportunities I'd have here. I had no idea the kind of like research we have with Nachusa, and just this idea of like close-knit grad program that we have here. I really enjoy that. So I'm very happy with the experience here. Like, we have an awesome advisor. He's like, he can be hands-on when you need him to be, like helping out and answering questions when you have them, but then he can also take a step back and not micromanage our projects and be like, yeah, if you have questions, let me know, but if you don't, if I don't hear from you, I assume everything's going well.
Yeah.
And I really like that kind of like leadership style of, yes, we are master's students, we are grad students, like we have the ability to like work freely and independently, and there's always help when we need it.
Yeah, it's a good like guidance balance.
Yeah.
Let's see what else we have here. So you said that you were sort of on the fence about coming to grad school, but why did you decide to become a scientist, like even when you were in your undergrad? Why a scientist and why biology?
So science was kind of like a part of education that I liked early on. Like I kind of enjoyed my English classes and stuff, like going through high school. It wasn't like, oh man, I can't wait to write a paper or read another book. It was kind of like, yeah, this is just part of high school, whatever, like no opinion. But my science classes I always like really enjoyed, and I felt like there's kind of like this like concreteness about it where, like, now we know that's not true at all, but like at that level in high school it's kind of like, oh, like yes, an atom is an atom and you put these two ones together and mix this compound, and like chemistry had like a way, like a rhyme and a rhythm that made sense, like physics did, biology does. And like while I may not have like liked chemistry or physics, like I really enjoyed my biology classes in high school. So like my AP biology teacher like was very like impressionable on my life, where she just like fostered people's interest really well and like was very encouraging and made things very interesting, which is hard to do with like high school seniors.
Yeah.
Like most of us are kind of checked out at that point.
Trying to get people excited at that moment. Yeah.
Yeah. So she was really awesome, and then I went off to undergrad and I didn't know what I wanted to do, and I kind of just like floated around the sciences here and there. And then just took a few semesters where I was like not a few semesters, like a few months where I was majorless basically, and I was like, I don't know what I'm gonna do. I'm just gonna keep taking my like gen ed science classes and like really think about what interests me, what have I always liked, and like what's a passion that's like been there throughout my life that I just may not have noticed that's been a part of me. And I like turned back to plants. So I remembered my like AP biology class, remembered like being a little kid, like always like playing out in the grass and climbing trees and getting poison ivy every summer. And I was like, oh, duh, I've been like a tree hugger like all my life. Like my family's been calling me that since I was a little kid. Like maybe plants is the right route.
Yeah.
And I just kind of dove into that and like been really, really happy with it.
That's awesome. Anna gets really bad poison ivy.
Yeah, I think I've gotten it almost like every summer of my life. So yeah.
So you were drawn specifically to plants, which is sort of a broad category, but that it works out because they're easy to study because they sit still and and things like that. But if somebody told you today that you could never study plants again, you had to pick one other organism or organismal group to do the rest of your research on, what would you pick?
I think I would turn to mycology, because fungi are awesome, they're so cool, and I think it's so interesting that like a lot of people, when you see like a mushroom popping up out of the ground, you're seeing just a tiny percentage of that organism, and there's filaments all throughout the ground underneath, and like they can be some of the largest organisms in the world without anyone really knowing about it, just because there's tiny little filaments all connected through the soil. And that makes them hard to study, of course, like they're very fragile and hard to obtain. But I think just their whole structure is really interesting, and then also the fact that there's so many different species that carry different toxins. Yeah. And they provide like a huge resource for like medical advancement for different things. Another student in my like senior seminar class at Michigan State, she was studying different toxins for their antibacterial effect. So how well they were able to like inhibit bacteria growth on like a petri dish. So like her research was like really cool, and that was just something, you know, she got to do as a senior project. Yeah. So there's a ton of opportunity. There's so many species out there that we don't even know of, or like what sort of like cool things they can have for us in the future. So awesome. I think that's a really cool field.
That's a good choice.
A lot of opportunities.
Yes. So a little bit back to plants and field work stuff. What prairie plant is your absolute favorite?
I'm terrible at picking favorites of things, so I have two.
Oh, okay.
I really, really love rattlesnake masters because it looks so strange. And I think if you took this plant out of the prairie to set it in front of someone and be like, what ecosystem do you think this is coming from? I don't think they'd guess prairie first, like maybe like desert or
That's
something,
what I would guess too, yeah.
It has like these like long, like kind of like thick succulent leaves with like little spikes on the end, and then it puts up this one stalk with a little spike ball.
They're so weird.
They're really
weird
cool.
Flowers,
they're just very, very strange, and like nothing really looks like them out there.
No.
So they're really easy to identify. But they're also just like really weird and like kind of like charismatic. Like, oh, you just got this little spike ball flower. They're cute.
Yeah.
And then my other one would probably be wild bergamot, because it's in the mint family. So you can just pluck a leaf off, and it smells so good. Just get a little refreshing mint scent while you're walking through. And the top of the flowers they're made of a bunch of like tiny little flowers that kind of like all spread out in this little purple, adorable poof ball. So it looks like a Dr. Seuss flower, basically. It's super cute. So yeah, like I like the weird cutesy ones.
Yeah, the unique ones are fun. Okay, so you talked about the bugs thing.
Yeah.
So describe for me your ideal field conditions. You're going out to do a day of your research, best field conditions.
So starting early in the morning, just because it's nice to like get a head start before everything gets super hot, and like it gets hot in like mid-July. Oh my gosh.
Yes.
So yeah, like a good early start, probably like 60 degrees, no bugs. Depending on what we're doing, if there's like weighing and being involved, no wind.
Yeah, because the wind really messes up the field scales.
Yeah. And then honestly, like a team of like really awesome undergrads who know exactly what you want done and don't need to be like supervised, and you know you can just be like, okay, go to this site, go through the methods, do this one, and you know they're gonna get it done. You don't have to like double check the thing, which we did have this summer. Like we had some pretty great undergrads. We had a lot of people who like really like stepped up and like learned things pretty quickly.
I think that's another thing a lot of people don't think about. Like a lot of times when you picture like a lab researcher, it's just like one person sitting at the lab bench doing the procedure. But like field research in ecology is all about like the group of people that you can all get to do the same thing, because otherwise there's just no way you would get enough samples. That you need all of those hands on deck.
Yeah, and like that's something that I really like about our research group. Like we all help each other's projects, you know, like I was out with your like beetles and dung and everything, you're out learning the plants with me, and like really, and this is true for like all fields of research, like research cannot be done without undergrads. Like literally the brunt of the work is on the backs of the undergrads, and it's just so many things that need to be analyzed or collected or entered that you really do need a team of awesome people to help you out.
Yeah.
If one person were supposed to complete their entire thesis or dissertation all on their own, it would take years.
Oh my gosh, yeah. No, we're doing 2.5-year masters, and normally a master's is like, what, 2 years?
2 to 3, I guess, depending on
usually
what you're
one
doing.
summer.
Yeah.
But yeah, it would take 10 years to collect all the data that we've collected. That would just be a nightmare.
So thank you, undergrads.
Yes.
For anyone who is thinking about being an undergrad in the lab, please do it. We need you.
So thinking more about like things we do in the lab, how many papers do you think you've read?
Like across the board, probably like upwards of like 200, I would say.
Yeah.
Like just so many. Because our first semester, you come in, Nick asked us, our advisor asked us, okay, what do you want to research? We're like, I like plants.
Yeah.
He's like, cool, read papers about plants, like get the ball rolling. So yeah, our first semester we were just reading papers left and right. And then between like lab meetings, looking for methods, looking for citations, when you're writing up like papers and stuff, you read so many. Like they all, unfortunately, in my mind, they blur together sometimes. You have to go back and reread them a lot of the time.
Yeah.
Like, what was exactly that result? Or like, I remember liking this like sentence in there. Like, let me go back and find that. I hope I highlighted it.
Yeah. Yeah, there's far more reading going on than I think a lot of people outside of academia realize.
But it's a good skill to have.
Yeah.
I mean, I was fortunate enough with my undergrad experience where right after that, the first semester of my freshman year, I was reading papers for a class like that, where we kind of looked through and like looked for good methods versus bad methods. So like I'm very grateful that I had that skill to begin with, and I think that's a skill that like everyone in like any sort of like research area, not even just the sciences, but just any sort of research should have.
Yeah.
Very important.
Is there a scientist who sort of like inspires you, or like your favorite scientist?
So I'm kind of like fangirling right now about Dr. Lars Brudvig at Michigan State. And it's also partly because like that's my alma mater. Like I love Michigan State. It's such a great school. But he also researches functional traits in restored prairies. It's kind of like, yes, we're doing like the same thing.
Yeah.
Awesome. And a graduate student in his lab who was one of my TAs during one of my like summer field classes, awesome guy, Chad Zerval.
All the shout outs.
They're great people. They're both like super nice and very helpful and do awesome research.
Yeah.
So they just put out a paper covering functional diversity in like tons of different restored prairies across like Southwest Michigan that are all extremely variable. So some of them might have just been left alone for like 5 years and then throw some seed in them like, it's restored, cool. And other ones may have had more like active management on them. So they took a bunch of these like very varied field sites and published this huge, massive paper about the functional diversity there. And I need to reread it like 5 times. But everything that they're doing in that paper is like, yes, it's like what I want to do with my research. It's very, very cool. And they're both just great people. Like Chad was an awesome TA to have, and Lars helped me a bit in my like figuring out where I wanted to go for grad school and how to go about that whole process. He was like kind of sat down with me a few times and like helped me figure that out. So he's really awesome as a researcher and also just as a person to like reach out to if you have like questions and stuff.
Awesome. Yeah. So we talked about reading papers. How do you feel about the task of having to like write your thesis and then also write the article that you will submit to journals to try to get published?
I'm like kind of excited about that part because we've been writing a lot of like the intro and methods when we're doing like grant proposals when we're trying to get funding for it. So I'm really excited for writing that like second half of like, well, this is what I found and this is what it means, you know, kind of like closing it all up and putting it into this nice pretty package. And I know it's going to be like a nightmare of a process, especially for like trying to get it published and all that, but I really like the like I'm anticipating doing that where it's be more like packaged and I feel like you can write like a better like intro and abstract once you actually have the results.
Yeah, you have to like go back and rewrite the top.
Yeah. So I'm excited about doing that, and like, I mean, like writing is challenging, so you do have to like figure out who your audience is and like how to spin it in a way that they'll receive it well. So, but that challenge can be fun too. Yeah, it's a good practice.
And the other half of presenting your research once you've finished doing it, beyond writing the article, is going to a conference and presenting a talk or a poster. So are you excited about conferences?
Yeah, like I'm really excited about those. And yeah, just like being able to like present your research and like being around a bunch of people who are like researching like similar topics and like listening to their ideas. I think it's really fun.
And talk or poster?
I would say talk. So like, I know there's like the whole public speaking, like everyone getting nervous and anxious, and like I'm guilty of that too. But at least when you are doing a presentation, you can have like your notes and your cues and everything on your slides, and of course not reading from them or anything, but just having...
Nobody reads from PowerPoint slides.
No. But just kind of having like, okay, this is going to be like my rhythm and flow, and I know what I'm going to say when, versus a poster. It's nice to have that one-on-one with people, but sometimes people will come up for a poster and you're like, well, do they just want to like read it for a little bit? Do they want me to jump right into my spiel? Should I let them step back and look at the graphs? And it's kind of like this little like awkward exchange before someone says, what can I tell you about my research? Or what does this mean on this graph? You know, and I feel like that they're good for different things, but personally I would kind of like to have like a nice like flow and know exactly what I'm going to say when. It's a little less awkward.
That's fair. Yeah.
I don't have to stand there for like 2 hours.
No, like 10 minutes is a good amount of time, and then answering questions is fun.
Yeah.
Nice. What do you think is your greatest strength as a researcher? Even though you're still a very early career, what do you think you bring to the table?
I think I've had like a lot of good experience with like troubleshooting and things going wrong. So like my ability to kind of work through and like problem solve things when they arise is a good skill that I think I've like come to have over the last like year or two. So during my like senior independent research project, I was kind of like given like free reign of just just mess around with the study system, try out your own methods, go for it. Like the greenhouse is yours, go for it. So a lot of the methods I was trying weren't necessarily things that had been done before or like guided as much as they could have been. So a lot of the things didn't work. Like half my plants died for part of it. And so I think having that like early career failure is like helpful. It's kind of like, okay, things will go wrong. There's always a way to fix it. There's always a new method to try. Don't panic. Your research isn't over. There's still a result. It just wasn't perfect. You know, it's a jumping off point. So I think that's a good thing for like early career scientists to have, where we kind of have this idea of like, okay, I did all the work and wrote out all the methods. It'll go perfectly and nothing will go wrong. Like, yeah, right. Everything's gonna go wrong. Deal with it. It's just part of research. It wouldn't be research if it all went perfectly, because then we'd already know everything.
Right. Yeah. That's that's a good perspective. Nice. So you're handy at troubleshooting, which I've definitely witnessed firsthand. What do you think is like the number one thing you need to work on yet?
Probably writing. It takes me forever to write anything because I always like, so I go back and forth and I'm like, do I want to just like get it all out and get it down and then edit it a ton, or do I want to like make every sentence exactly how I like it? And it just takes me forever to get things out, and I'll finish writing a paper and then I'll look back at it like a week later for another assignment or another grant where I'm like, I want to try a different way. I want to write it different this time, and then I have to start all over again. So I think that's like a skill that I could definitely work on. I think that's a common problem with people who have been in the sciences like throughout their whole education too.
Yeah.
Like I feel like I had pretty good English classes throughout high school and some like good like science writing classes, but I feel like writing's something that you're always trying to improve on.
Well, because so much of the education focuses on like, let's learn how to do science and do methods and think about like, how do you design experiments, and that whole like, oh, well, you'll write about it later kind of thing. And
I mean, kind of pushed it off.
And you talked about how many papers you've read, and like, of those 200 papers, how many of them were really poorly written and hard to get through? Like, yeah, the writing thing is important because you want it to be readable. So
of course, yeah.
And I know you told me before you hate this question, but what's next for you?
Wide open door. No. No, I want to finish my degree and work a little bit outside of academia. Since I went straight from undergrad to grad school, I want to kind of take a step back from classes and degrees and stuff and work a little bit more into like career and like getting in the field real like tactical type skills, and not just, oh, I'm a hoity-toity person who's never left the university. So I want to get some more experience that way, and maybe find a suitable career that will keep me happy for a couple of years, or come back for a PhD. I'm kind of just leaving the opportunities open, but yeah.
And is there anything else that you want all of them to know about you, or your research, or your grad school experience?
I would say whatever you're trying to do, just like go for it and do it. There's so many like diverse people in grad school. Like I get like the whole point of doing this is like who's a scientist? It's all of us. We have, if you look around our department, we have a wide diversity of people in the department. And so just because you think like, oh, I don't like bugs and dirt, I can't be an ecologist. Like, well, do plants or birds or anything. So yeah, just like try everything out. Take opportunities when they arise. Like, it's better to like say yes to things than like say no and stay home. And if anyone like is thinking that they might want to go into sciences, if you're already thinking about it, you should probably do it.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
If that idea is
just
already
give it
in
a
your
try.
head, just go it.
Yeah.
Give it a try.
Yeah,
and it's okay to fail. It happens all the time in science.
Awesome. Well, I want to thank Anna for talking to us about her grad school experience. I know it's hard to be the first person to do an interview series like this, but I think this was a lot of fun.
Yeah, I had a great time.
I hope you guys enjoy it. If you liked this video, don't forget to like this video. If you didn't like it, please share it with someone who would. And if you'd like to support the Roving Naturalist, don't forget to hit the subscribe button. I'll see you next time.